I love me some Wild West action. It was a simpler time that is one of my favorite eras in history. Sure, there was no such thing as video games or indoor plumbing, but the Wild West had other charms. The original Xbox was a great machine if you wanted to experience the Wild West back in the day. So for this episode of the Big Retro Show, I'm going to be talking about some of the Western games on the OG Xbox. We kick things off with a game that I had only recently become aware of, and is probably a great candidate for a remake with today's technology. Of course, I'm talking about Darkwatch. Darkwatch mixes some Wild West themes with a little supernatural vampire hunting, and is a great game to experience the Wild West. You play as Jericho, who is basically a bandit who sets out to rob a train. Little do you know that the train is transporting an evil elder vampire named Lazarus, and you turned into a vampire. You set out to chase Lazarus and destroy him so you can become human again. Along the way, you join a group of vampire hunters named the Darkwatch, who recruit you to their side so you can take out Lazarus.
I've always gone for the tall, dark, and bloodthirsty type. Watch your back out there, Jericho. Not everyone's as happy as I am to have you in the Darkwatch.
Darkwatch is basically a first-person shooter that plays well on the Xbox. The game's combat is not unlike combat you would find in games of that era, such as Halo. What sets this game apart is that you can choose to be good or bad. Each path grants your character new powers that you can use against your enemy. It's not entirely a new concept for sure nowadays, but during this era of gaming, this is when we saw the rise of the anti-hero main characters, and this game fell in line with that. As you progress through the game, you uncover more of the story and characters that you will eventually have to make decisions about. One of the best aspects of this game is its aesthetics. It's set in the Wild West world, but most of it takes place at night. You will be fighting in plains, in ghost towns, mines, and citadels. It all fits the Wild West motif quite nicely, with a supernatural twist, of course. The enemies in this game consist mostly of skeletons, banshees, and zombie gunners. Alas, the game has no boss fights, except for Lazarus and another boss. No spoilers. It would have been cool to fight against other boss monsters. The game is light on the RPG elements. You can either drink your victim's blood or put them out of their misery. Drinking their blood makes you go over to the evil side and grants you evil powers. Putting them out of their misery gives you light powers. I chose the light way because of the chain lightning attack. It came in useful, especially when you get overrun. The weapons in this game are standard first-person shooter weapons, such as a shotgun, a carbine rifle, a pistol, a sniper rifle, a crossbow, and an RPG. There's really nothing new here, but it works. Darkwatch is a great game to play on the OG Xbox if you like westerns, and a good way to kick off this episode. And I know most of the games that I explore in this episode were also released on the PS2, but the Xbox edges out the PS2 when it comes to western titles. Up next is a game that I missed playing when it came out in 2004. Rockstar did a really good job in capturing the Wild West feel with Red Dead Revolver. For those of you wondering, this is the first game in the Red Dead series and laid the foundation for the greatness that is Red Dead Revolver 2. But rather than be an open world type of game, Red Dead Revolver is told through chapters in which you play as Bounty Hunter Red. There's plenty of killing to do in each of the chapters, and you will be fighting on trains, in canyons, and Wild West towns, and it all adds to the Wild West motif of this game. Along the way, you will meet a host of characters that are a bit campy, and well, it is a classic way that Rockstar mixes in over-the-top humor, cliches, and camp into their games that we have all grown accustomed to.
Until I told him I was going to take him to see Woody Klein to see if he could help.
The game is essentially a third-person shooter, and the controls are really pretty simple, and similar to the ones you use in Red Dead Redemption, the second game in the Red Dead trilogy. You can shoot, jump, crouch, switch weapons on the fly, and use the Deadeye button, which is essentially bullet time to wipe out your enemies. The game also has some dueling sequences, which in my opinion are harder than they need to be. In the dueling sequences, you have to pull down on the right stick to draw your weapon, pull up to raise the gun, and then you can lock in your shots up to 6 times before the slow motion part of the duel expires. The reticle changes from yellow, indicating a poor shot, red to indicating a hit, and a closer cropped red target to indicate a lethal shot. It's really not unlike the sequences we see in the later games. There are just a few more steps. One of the game's best aspects is its story. You play as a mysterious Red who doesn't say much. I mean, he's no John Marston, so it's sort of hard to get to know the dude. During certain chapters, you get to play as other heroes in the Red Dead world, such as this dude named John Swift. Each chapter revolves, get it? Revolves? Around you taking out a bounty, which becomes increasingly more difficult as you play through this game. The graphics and music are really quite good for an early Xbox game. The sounds used in this game especially add to the camp and feel of the game, and ups the ante when it comes to production value. Red Dead Revolver does a great job of immersing you into the Wild West motif, and is an absolute must-play if you own an Xbox. Of course, this game was also released on the PS2, so there's really no excuse for you not to play it. Take a story of revenge and put it in a Wild West setting where anything goes, and you get Dead Man's Hand. This is a first-person shooter that is a bit mediocre, but fits the bill when it comes to this episode. In Dead Man's Hand, you play as a former gang member who is betrayed by his gang because, of course, you don't want to kill innocent women and children. Your gang, on the other hand, saw this as weakness on your part, and decided you need to pay with your life. Ah, the joys of being in a gang. Anywho, you embark on a mission to avenge yourself by killing every member of the gang. You accomplish your goal by arming yourself with a handgun, revolver, shotgun, and dynamite, and of course a Molotov cocktail or some dynamite to round out the carnage. Dead Man's Hand has a huge gambling component. At the beginning of each level, you play 5-card draw poker, and if you are successful at making hands, you obtain power-ups such as health and ammunition. But if you lose a hand, you don't get anything to start the level off. It's pretty fair. The game is set in 1880s Mexico, and as Tejon, the main character of the game, you will be fighting in ghost towns, atop horses, in canyons, and in mines to reap your revenge on your one-time homies. This is probably one of the more forgiving first-person shooters I have ever played, simply because you don't have to be accurate at all. The game rewards you with headshots and other precision shots which are quite easy to pull off. Let's just say the game is very liberal in terms of its shooting mechanics and targeting. The game also features a trick shot meter that lets you fire secondary shots for your weapons. You increase the meter by shooting enemies and creating combos. It's a concept that I haven't seen in any other first-person shooter since this game. That's not a bad thing, albeit it's not one of the more polished shooters on the good old OG Xbox. The sounds and music in this game are okay, they aren't anything special, but it fits the bill. The voice acting in Dead Man's Hand sounds like a bunch of white dudes trying to talk like old-time Mexican gunslingers.
We shook the pillars of heaven when we rode. We were led by a cold-blooded killer named Tennessee Vic.
In other words, it's pretty bad. The game has its charms though. Every now and then you will hear your enemy say some pretty funny things. It made me smile during my gameplay, and that's not a bad thing. Dead Man's Hand was released solely on the Xbox and is a worthy addition to the library. It's a game that fits the theme of this episode, but not the greatest Wild West game on the OG Xbox. Oddworld Stranger's Wrath is a different kind of first-person shooter set in the Western world, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's a game that has all the mechanics of a first-person shooter, but that's where the similarities end. In Oddworld Stranger's Wrath, you play as this gruff dude named the Stranger, who is essentially on a mission to earn enough money to have a surgery that will save his life. To do that, you must collect bounties across the Wild West landscapes populated by characters from Oddworld. Anyone who has played Oddworld will know what I'm talking about, and this game is wacky. The Stranger is opposed to using traditional firearms, so instead he uses a double crossbow that uses live animals as ammunition. The animals are these cute critters that have different powers. For example, the spider wraps up enemies so you can immobilize them. You get the idea. The game teaches you to hunt for live ammo if you are to survive. What's cool about the crossbow is that you can arm yourself with 2 different types of ammunition, and you can use these in unison to take out your enemies or bring them in alive. The game emphasizes the value of bringing in your enemies and bounties alive. You essentially get paid a lot more if you do, but sometimes it's just easier to kill them. I was having problems trying to bring them in alive, so I killed most of the bounties. After you complete each bounty, you can return to town to get paid and stock up on supplies. Each bounty presents its own set of unique obstacles, platforming, and attacks. It's really a game that makes you think about how you want to take the bounties down. The Wild West motif that this game incorporates is all good. You will be interacting with creatures from the Oddworld universe, and they sass the hell out of you. It's fun. Most of the fighting you'll be doing is set in canyons, old sewers, and other Wild West areas. It's good fun. The game was an original Xbox exclusive and was later ported over to the later consoles. At the time, it was a real coup for the system to have this game. However, this is a game that I missed because, well, I'm not really a big fan of Oddworld. The other reason I sort of avoided this game is because of the ammo you use. It's just all too weird. But after playing it, I'm glad that I did, because although it takes getting used to, especially switching from first person to third person mode, it really is a solid experience. The game's graphics are really good for this era and the voice acting is hilarious. The stranger is this gruff dude who is sort of boneheaded and he runs on all fours. He looks weird, but hey, we are talking about an Oddworld game. If you have never played this game, do yourself a favor and give it a try. You won't be disappointed. Finally, let's talk about Gun. This is a game that hardly gets the respect it deserves. It was the first game that I played set in the Wild West that I found to be truly immersive and did a great job at recreating the feel of being in a Wild West atmosphere. This game has my vote for the best Wild West game on the OG Xbox and the PS2. If I didn't know any better, I would have thought this game was created by Rockstar. You definitely see the edginess of the Rockstar games like the Grand Theft Auto series, and the gameplay is similar to those games. In Gun, you play as Colton, who is out on a mission of vengeance against the people responsible for your father's death, voiced by the great Chris Christopherson. The action begins with you and your father hunting game to sell to the riverboats. It's here where you learn the basic mechanics of the game, such as drawing your weapon and quick draw, which is essentially bullet time. You board a riverboat and the boat is attacked by this evil dude named the Reverend and his gang, who basically kill everyone on board. Before your father dies, he tells you that he is not your real father and sets you to uncover the truth about your lineage. First off, this game is beautiful on the Xbox. It uses various earth tones to create the various landscapes and cities that you will be exploring in this open world adventure. The game has a bit of an RPG element baked into it, and you can improve your quick draw skills, health, and other stats to make your character kill more efficiently. The game pretty much plays like a GTA set in the Wild West, but it has its own set of missions, such as the Pony Express, Ranch Hand, poker missions, and wanted missions that you can complete to earn money and increase your stats. One of the coolest aspects of this game is the horse riding. You can actually use trample attacks to take out enemies, and when I first played this game, I thought that was so cool. I haven't seen any other game in the Wild West since Gun celebrate trample kills the way that Gun does. The game's story is also one of its strong points. Along the way, you will encounter a whole host of colorful characters, some taken from the real people in the Wild West, and it adds a layer of authenticity to the gameplay. In Gun, you will run from town to town, taking on missions to improve your stats, and do quite a bit of killing while uncovering the origin story that your character is tasked with. This game received a lot of accolades when it was released in 2005, and for good reason. Anyone who has an Xbox or a PS2 should play this game at least once, especially if you like the Red Dead games. And that's going to be it for the Big Retro Show, guys. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, drop a comment, leave a like, and consider subscribing to the channel. And I will catch you next time on the Big Retro Show.